Hello, everyone. There was an old house at the end of a silent street, hidden behind dying trees and a rusted gate. People said it was cursed. Anyone who entered never came back. Kids threw stones at its broken windows, but no one ever dared to go in. The house had a secret, one no one understood. Its basement was alive. One rainy evening, a man named Zaid stood before that house. He was a drifter, moving from city to city, stealing, lying, and hiding. His face was thin, eyes sunken, and hands always twitching. He thought the house would be the perfect place to hide. He pushed open the squeaking gate. The wind moaned as if trying to warn him. He ignored it. The house smelled like rotting meat and something older, something dead for centuries. The wooden floor creaked with every step. The walls were covered with peeling wallpaper, stained with dark red marks that looked like dried blood. A dead rat lay in the hallway, its eyes missing. Zaid didn't care. He had seen worse, or so he thought. He found an old couch in the living room and sat down. The fabric was wet, sticky. He stood up and looked. It was blood, fresh blood. But no one had been here for years. He turned around. The walls were bleeding, too. Thick, dark blood oozed down slowly as if the house itself was crying. A whisper brushed past his ear. "You shouldn't be here." He jumped. No one was there. Just silence. Then he heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, dragging steps. 1, 2, 3. The sound of a chain scraping the floor. But the dust was thick. No footprints formed. He grabbed a rusty iron rod lying in the corner and crept toward the stairs. His heart pounded like a drum in his ears. The steps stopped. Then came a child's giggle, high-pitched, unnatural. It echoed through the house like a razor against bone. He ran up the stairs. They bent under his weight, moaning like something alive. Upstairs, the hallway was darker. The light from outside didn't reach here. The walls were covered in black mold, and something moved inside it. Eyes, tiny glowing eyes. They blinked at him, hundreds of them. He tried to touch one wall, and a mouth opened, biting at his fingers. He screamed and ran into the nearest room. Inside was a nursery. The crib stood in the middle, rocking slowly on its own. The walls were covered with handprints, baby-sized, dipped in blood. The crib creaked. He walked toward it. Inside was no baby, just bones, tiny, crushed bones, and a doll with no face. Its head turned toward him on its own. He backed away, tripping over something soft. It was a body, half-eaten. The lower half was missing, as if something had chewed it off. The face was frozen in a scream. The eyes were gone, tongue pulled out, and something had written on the chest in black ink, "Basement feeds." He ran. He didn't stop until he was downstairs again, panting, sweating, shaking. He looked around. The front door was gone, just gone. A wall stood there now. Then he heard it, the basement door creaking open. It hadn't been opened before. It led downward into a pit of blackness. A smell hit him, worse than death, worse than rot. It was the smell of hungry things. He tried to leave. He hit the walls. No way out. The house shifted around him like a throat preparing to swallow. A whisper again. "Basement feeds." He was drawn toward the door, not by choice, but like gravity. The air pulled him. He grabbed the edge of a table, but it snapped in half like paper. The stairs creaked as he stepped down. 1 step, 2. The light above faded until there was nothing but blackness. He lit his phone's flashlight. It flickered. The walls were covered in flesh, not wood, skin. Hair grew from it, faces pushed through, eyes blinked at him from the walls. He screamed. The scream echoed not just once, but 100 times. Each echo had a different voice. Men, women, children, all screaming, all inside the walls. He heard bones crunching underfoot. He looked down. The stairs were made of skulls, real human skulls. Blood dripped from the ceiling, warm and thick. It landed on his face, tasted like iron and rot. The basement widened into a room. At the center stood a table, and on it lay a body, twitching, still alive. A man, mouth sewn shut, eyes wide with terror. His chest was open, his heart beat in the open air. Around the room, shadows moved, tall, thin, with no faces. Their fingers were long and sharp like needles. One touched Zaid's arm. It burned, left behind a black mark shaped like a mouth. Then the body on the table spoke, without moving lips. Its voice came from inside Zaid's head. "You woke it. You fed it. You are next." He backed away, tripping over chains. They wrapped around his legs. Something growled in the dark, a wet growl like lungs filled with slime. He turned to run, but the floor opened beneath him. He fell. He landed in a tunnel made of meat. It pulsed like a beating heart. The walls were alive, twitching, moaning. He crawled, trying to escape. The air was thick with flies. They buzzed into his ears, nose, and mouth. He gagged. Then he saw them, people, trapped in the walls, their eyes open, hands reaching out. One woman whispered, "Kill us, please." He screamed again. At the end of the tunnel was a door made of bones stitched together by tendons. He opened it. Inside was a room with a mirror, only the mirror didn't reflect him. It showed another version of him, naked, skinless, bleeding, smiling. The mirror, Zaid walked toward him. It stepped out, real, alive. It touched him. He felt his skin peel slowly, like being flayed with fire. He passed out. When he woke, he was on the table now, mouth sewn shut, chest open, heart beating in the air. Shadows moved around him, poking, slicing, whispering. One shadow whispered in his ear, "Now you belong to the basement." Years passed. No one saw Zaid again. But the house still stood darker than ever. Sometimes at night, people heard screams coming from under the ground, wet, sharp, human screams. The basement was always hungry, always feeding. The table beneath Zaid was wet with blood, not just his, but from hundreds before him. The walls of the basement shifted like breathing lungs. He tried to scream, but his mouth was sewn with thick black wire. Every breath rattled in his exposed ribs. He could see his own heart beating, helpless, while the shadows circled him. One leaned closer. Its face was a hole, just a hole, and from it came a sucking sound like it was drinking his soul. The needles returned. They didn't just pierce him. They whispered as they stabbed. Words entered his brain like hooks. Pain is food. Suffering is wine. Your agony feeds the walls. His nerves lit up like fire. Skin peeled from his legs. The veins were pulled out one by one, tied into shapes, symbols, moving symbols that writhed like worms. One shadow wrapped his tongue around its fingers and tugged. He fainted again. This time, when Zaid woke up, he wasn't alone on the table. Another body was placed beside him, a girl, maybe 14, covered in chains. She was alive, sobbing quietly. Her eye sockets were empty. The shadows danced around her, slicing open her stomach and pulling out her intestines like ribbons. She didn't scream. Her vocal cords had already been removed and pinned to the wall like artwork. Zaid watched, trapped in his own flesh, as they pulled open the girl's skull and wrote inside it with bloody fingers, The basement remembers, they wrote, letter by letter, until her brain stopped twitching. Then they turned back to him. A mouth opened in the ceiling and began to whisper his name. Zaid, Zaid, you taste like fear. You belong here now. Suddenly the table tilted. He slid off it, falling into another pit. It wasn't dirt. It was bodies, thousands of them, all alive but broken. Bones shattered, skin missing, mouths frozen open. They reached for him, whispering, "Kill me, trade places, cut out your name." One body grabbed his arm and forced it into his chest. Inside was a beating heart, but it had his name carved on it. He screamed inside his head. He crawled out of the pit and into another hallway. This one was made entirely of teeth. The floor, the walls, the ceiling, sharp, yellow, broken teeth. Some still had gums. Blood dripped from the top like saliva. The hallway breathed in and out like a giant mouth. Zaid slipped and fell onto a molar the size of a coffin. It bit down. His leg broke like a twig. The sound echoed for miles. He crawled on, leg dragging, until he reached a door. On it were dozens of human faces, stitched together. One eye blinked. "Don't go in," it begged. He pushed the door open. Inside was the original family who had lived in the house, dead but not resting. The father hung from the ceiling by hooks in his spine, organs still moving. The mother lay on the ground, her skin spread out like a rug. Two children sat in a corner, gnawing on someone's fingers. They turned. Their faces had no eyes, only maggots. They smiled. The daughter crawled toward Zaid. Her bones cracked backwards. "We fed it first," she hissed. "Now it feeds itself. Every soul it eats becomes a room. Every scream becomes a stare." Zaid tried to move, but his leg was shattered. The girl climbed onto him, biting into his neck. Her teeth were made of glass. She whispered, "Bleed more. It likes it when it's fresh." Zaid fainted again. This time he didn't wake on the floor. He woke inside the wall. He could feel wood and blood pressing into him. He screamed, but it was only heard inside the house. Faces in the wallpaper blinked at him. One spoke. "This is the price. This is the deal. Enter the house, and it swallows your story." Suddenly, he could hear everything, every scream in every room, every person trapped, clawing, dying. The house was a throat, swallowing slowly, eternally. Somewhere above, new footsteps entered. A teenage boy, curious, ignorant. Zaid saw through the walls as the boy stepped into the living room, looking around with a flashlight. Zaid tried to warn him, but he had no mouth now, only eyes, eyes stitched into the floor. The boy walked toward the basement. The door opened on its own. Zaid screamed silently, "Don't go, don't go." But a house moaned in excitement. It was hungry again. The boy stepped down. Zaid felt the heat rise. The shadows danced. Chains uncoiled. The house began to laugh. It was a sound that turned the brain to mush. Then the boy screamed. Zaid watched the same nightmare repeat. The hooks, the table, the peeling, the shadows whispering. But something was different this time. The boy didn't stop screaming. He screamed so hard the walls cracked. Zaid felt something inside himself shift. Pain, yes, but also rage. Maybe he wasn't just food. Maybe he could fight. He began to move within the wall. A small twitch, then more. He pushed. The wall groaned. A bone snapped. He kept pushing. Faces around him screamed. "You'll wake it. You'll make it angry." He didn't care. He wanted out. The wall began to tear. Blood sprayed. Nails pierced his limbs. Still he pushed. Then the wall vomited him out. Zaid landed back in the hallway, gasping, whole again, but not the same. His skin was pale, eyes black. Something had stayed inside him, but he could move. He ran toward the table. The boy was still alive. Zaid picked up a broken pipe and smashed one of the shadows in the head. It let out a sound like shattering glass. The others turned. Zaid didn't stop. He broke the chains, carried the boy. The basement screamed. The floor shook. The stairs melted. But Zaid ran, dragging the boy. Behind him, the shadows shrieked and reached with clawed hands. The door at the top was open, just once, just for a second. He made it through. The house exploded in a howl of fury. The front door sealed forever. Zaid and the boy collapsed in the street, covered in blood and whispers. The boy cried. Zaid didn't. He knew it wasn't over. Something from the basement had entered him, something alive. A week later, the boy was found in his room. His heart had been removed. No blood, no mess. Just a note written on the wall in red. The basement feeds. And Zaid, he vanished. But if you walk past an old house on a silent street, and the wind feels warm like breath, if you hear a whisper calling your name from below the ground, don't answer, because the basement is always hungry, and now it knows your name.